We're at the Women's Football Summit presented by EA Sports and delighted to be joined today by Fara Williams. Fara, thank you so much for being here with us. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. We want to start by talking a little bit about how your post-playing career is going. How are you enjoying life being retired now?
It's been good. I was a bit worried when I was considering retirement, especially because I had to retire through illness. So I wasn't quite ready to retire. And then I was presented with an opportunity from the BBC to do some punditry. I thought I'd always retire from the game and be a coach because I love coaching. I love giving back to the game. But I thought this opportunity was similar to coaching in terms of analysing the game and talking about my opinion, which is what football is and what sport is. It's about opinions. I have a strong one. And so I enjoy it, I really do. I enjoy trying to educate the viewers around what I see. And I'm quite happy, thinking differently and seeing differently to people that I work with.
And is there any desire to go for the badges and maybe get back into coaching? Because I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but we were hanging out when you were doing a different interview earlier, and you've not only have you got such a great eye for talent. I was listening to who you were saying was better than whoever else, but it seems that you do see the game in such a way that if there's any way you could impart that onto sort of the next generation of players, that would be huge if you wanted to coach.
No, definitely. I mean, it's something that I know I will do at some point. I actually did the England under-23s last year alongside Mo, so I was on a placement and I got offered the same opportunity to do it again this year. It's just clashed a little bit with the media, and obviously the media is bringing my income and that's my contract, so it was difficult. I really enjoyed it, developing the young players. I'm going through my A licence now. So coaching is there, and I've done it throughout my whole career. As female footballers, we've had to work alongside playing, or we did. We don't have to anymore, thankfully. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I love getting on the grass. I don't think I'll ever be a manager, but in terms of coaching and developing players, it's something that I really enjoy doing.
I'm thinking about what we're here for today, the FIFA game that we're here to celebrate as well. Do you play the game yourself? Do you enjoy playing it?
As a kid, I used to play it, and so obviously this is many years ago. But my brothers were always better than me. What was frustrating about playing the game when I was a kid is that the things I wanted to do and what I could see in the game, I couldn't actually execute through the remote control. So it's frustrating, and I would lose all the time. And I've played recently, and I mean, in terms of the graphics and how the game's developed, it's unbelievable. It's so good to see on the screen. But so as the remote also developed and got better, and yeah, there was too much going on the remote for me, but my nephews all play and they all have the computer. They have one each, and they love the game. And I think what the game does is, it educates people about football and about individual players. And if ever I need to know about a player, I go to my nephews and get the answers for.
You talk about it as a way of education, but I mean, how far do you think the women's game has come? And partly because I've got women in FIFA 23, but do you think it's sort of chicken or the egg that you've got this video games coming along and it improves the game, or you've got the game improving and you've got more eyes on it, or is it all just part and parcel of the growth?
Yeah, I think it's a big part of the growth. I think certainly the game has been growing over at least the last 10 years. There's been people behind the scenes really trying to get it in a position it's in now. This Euro success in the summer hasn't happened overnight. There's been heavy investment. There's been 4 semi-final disappointments. And then there's been broadcasters and brands getting on board with that and really trying to promote it. And I think, we will talk about money, but actually investment and giving players the opportunity to train every day as their sole job. I think the rewards we saw, this summer. I think the game's fantastic. The fact that we now have a female team in it. Certainly after the Euros, my nephews were singing the Ella Toon and Russo song. So already the Euros did something really big, and I think what this does is further educate them and further allow them to understand players, get to know more of the players within the WSL, and really grow the game, outside of just your football fans, because not everybody that plays the game are football fans or even go to the football games. They just love the game and players within that. So I think it will just educate them more about the female game, and for me it's great, and I'm hearing that it's going to expand, so even better.
You mentioned the Euros this summer and the success of that event. What are your thoughts on the current Lionesses squad and kind of maybe the successes we might see in the future?
It's a good squad, right? I think they're a very good team. I think the reward of training every day, learning and developing within their clubs, I think has played a huge part. It just gives them the confidence. But I think the difference in this group of players to the group of players I played with, they're entertainers. We used to go to tournaments as players and we used to be excited by the crowd, but we probably didn't know how to entertain the crowd and play in front of crowds. And the Americans did for so many years. And I think that this group of players, I think with social media, the TikToks where you have to showcase your personality and stuff, they're used to it. So to play in front of thousands of fans is what they want and it's what they thrive off. So I think they're, certainly in terms of that and that entertainment side, and they're great, but they also have a great manager. One of the best in the game, and I'm saying, and I mean that across both male and female. I talk about her as a phenomenal coach, not just a female coach who's in the women's game. I think she's great, and look, if she was to cross over to the men's game, I think she'd be a huge success there.
We're talking about the Lionesses. We've got another tournament around the corner-ish. Any predictions? I know it's early, but any predictions for the World Cup?
It's difficult because you've got a long season to get through, and injuries could play a part in that. Players not making tournaments. I think we've seen that in the summer with Spain, missing some top players. So there's a long season ahead. I think at the minute England have great momentum and great confidence in, one, in each other, but two, in the management and where they're going with that. So I certainly think they've got a great chance of going there. But the Americans look good. I know we beat them and we played with an arrogance that I really enjoyed watching us play with. I mean as in a winner's arrogance where they don't know how to lose anymore. And that's the type of arrogance that the Americans played with for so many years. But watching the Americans and some of those young talents coming through, and I know they're in transition, they have got a good squad in the making. And it's crazy to think they just seem to transition, and the next young players that come through are equally as good as what they've allowed to go. So I think they could be very good come the summer. The host nations as well will always, have with a home crowd, New Zealand and Australia. I'm sure Sam Kerr will have something to say about that tournament. I think it'll be an exciting one, and I think it'll be. I'm hoping it'll be just as big as what the Euros was this summer. I think they would have seen how well we did it over here. The fans coming out, not just for the home nation, which we tend to see in tournaments. There were fans, 20,000+ at Germany against Austria, for example. So I think in terms of that, I'm hoping that these two nations can deliver like the women did this summer.
Don't remind me of that Germany-Austria game. That was heartbreaking. So we can't quite get you to say everything's coming home, but you're saying that England have a chance.
Yeah, no, I think I said it was coming home this summer.
You kept saying it all the way through.
I just think that we have to see how the injuries, I think, is so cruel to the game, isn't it? And I think they can play a huge part. So I think if you ask me this question in May, I'll have a better idea, a clearer idea of what I think. But if we was to go to the tournament tomorrow, I'd say we'll bring the World Cup home as well. So we've got a few months yet before the World Cup. So I don't want to speak too soon. Hopefully people can stay fit and we can bring the World Cup home.
We love the confidence, though. Absolutely love the confidence. I want to come back to what you mentioned earlier on about the success of Serena Wigman and the potential of her maybe crossing over to the men's game. We've had it mentioned before with the likes of Emma Hayes, with Casey Stoney. Do you think we're going to see a female manager in the men's game?
I don't know. I think what needs to happen, and they're all of who you've mentioned are fantastic managers and coaches, but I think what is difficult is that young boys coming through academies, they need to see it there first. The visibility of female coaches within academies has to be seen, I think, because it becomes alien. As young boys coming through and all they see is men coaches, when they come to senior level and randomly there's a female manager or coach, it is a bit alien. What we've been lucky with in the women's game, right through grassroots and all the way through to senior level, we've had male and female coaches, and so it's not alien to us, and we respect and take to both genders. Whereas I think in the men's game, you can't just throw a female in at the top and go, here, there you go. It will take time to get that respect level. And I think if it just is normal through the academies, then to say it, then I think it will, as you said, be more normal for players to accept. But I certainly think they have the qualities to go and manage in the men's game, no question. And hopefully, now I do think society and the men's game and players within that, in terms of their opinion of the female game, is changing. I think they'll be more accepted now. If you was to ask me 5 years ago, I'd have probably said no chance, because I just don't think the respect levels were there, but certainly they are now.
And so maybe one day Fara Williams coaching in the Chelsea Academy.
That would be nice. Yeah, exactly. And I think that would be normal, you know, for the boys. I think, especially when you're young kids, they don't understand. You know, the difference between male and female coaches. They just go there and they want to learn. And so whatever the gender is, it's just about learning and developing. I'd love to do that. It's on my doorstep as well. I mean, if you're listening, Potter Academy.
We'll see if we can have a word.
But I'd like to stay in the women's game. I want to develop our game. I want to help our players be the best they can be.
Yeah. Do you see that sometimes people kind of view that the men's game is a step up from the women's game when we have these conversations about managers?
They clearly do, and that's why they say it. And I also think that's why the likes of Emma Hayes and other female managers, when they get put in a hat for some jobs, they see our level at like League Two, which is quite a disrespect to those managers, because knowing the game and knowledge of the game and managing people and players, it doesn't matter. You've got to be able to, you've got to have a skill to do that. So management is about a skill, and I think certainly Emma Hayes has learned that over the years and is one of the best at managing top players and getting everybody to buy into what she wants. I mean, it's difficult being a sub at the best of times, but to be world-class players and sitting on the bench and kind of accepting your role, you've got to have something about you as a manager for these players to buy into that and be okay with that. Because it hasn't been about money in the women's game to just sit on the bench. We could argue it's a little bit different in the men's game on earning mega bucks and sitting on the bench, but certainly not in the women's game. And the way she's able to do that, as I say, I think it would be quite easy for her to cross over, but she should be spoken about in the Premier League and not, you know, the Championship or sorry, not even the Championship, the League Two. No disrespect to those managers that are in that, again, but I think sometimes that's where we compare our game to. I think in terms of playing, you can't compare the women's WSL to the Premier League because the levels are so different. But in terms of management, I think you can compare. You can go, Emma Hayes is good enough to go and manage in the Premier League. But if you was to say, can Fara Williams go and play in the Premier League? Absolutely not. I'm saying me because I don't want to say it about anybody else and then be offended. But I'm just saying the men's game is so far advanced to the women's. Comparing the two is just silly.
Get you playing so just in front of the defence. You have to move much when Pington balls over.
You know what? When you know, even at Soccer Aid, I was fortunate to play in Soccer Aid 2 years on the bounce, and even when you're playing with the retired pros that put a bit of weight on since retirement and whatever else, I promise you the speed in which they play at and the skill level is far greater than the women's game. And that's not to take anything away from our game, but it's the speed in which they do it at and the areas, the tight areas that they do it at the minute, it's far greater than our game. But they have the advantage of having come through an academy every single day for however many years to be the professional they are. I'm hoping in 20 years' time we're going to see our academy, because even now that our game's professional, our academy girls train twice a week in the evening, 2 hours. So they don't get treated the same way now. I'd like to see a 5-year-old girl, a 5-year-old boy be put on the same program and see what happens all the way through until they become adults, doing exactly the same thing. And then we'll see if it is just a gender thing in terms of physicality, etc., or is it just a fact of lack of opportunities and investment?
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine after the success we've had over not even this year, but the past several years that we won't start to see that. I want to talk a bit about the WSL this season. Looking ahead, I know it's hard to predict what's going to happen, but what are your predictions for the winner of the WSL this year, and who's going to qualify for the Champions League?
I think Chelsea will win it again. I just think their squad depth is very, very good. Emma's recruitment, she's a smart manager. She'd already had these players signed last year because she knew what they needed. I know she's probably already planned ahead for next season. She probably knew about this illness she had and needed an operation. She's probably planned for the 6 weeks she's going to be off, because that's the type of manager that Emma Hayes is. Their squad, and as I mentioned, when you speak to some of the players, they talk about the intensity that they train with and the level of competition there, and you can't take your foot off the pedal for a minute. I don't think there's a team like that in the WSL at the minute. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion of it. I think Arsenal's strong. I think 2 centre-halves injured now until Christmas. I think that puts them back a little bit. I think we've seen that against Reading at the weekend. Just the inexperience of Catley and Ruben Moy playing centre half together. They don't bring the same as Rafa and Leah Williamson. So I think that's difficult for Arsenal. I don't think they have the depth there to replace them to centre half. I think they'll finish second. And then I'm going to put it out there. I actually think that Man United might finish third this year. Their recruitment's been very good. They have a lot more attacking options to change games when they're not happening for them. I really like Garcia. Very good player. Seeing a close up at the weekend in the Brighton game, very good. So I think I think that they've got a squad now, that are mentally prepared to break that mental block of not being able to stay in that top three. We seen last year, right up until the last game of the season, we thought they were going to get that third spot on Champions League, and it slipped away to a struggling City team last year.
Well, we'll definitely be showing you this clip again at the end of the season and seeing if your predictions are right. But Farah, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.